Happy Sabbath. We're in a war, are we not? We are in a war, and the war is getting more and more real by the day. My war began very young in life, and so the Father plucked me up out of a life of drugs and alcohol and brought me back to church, and one day my pastor's wife had the audacity to say to me, maybe it's your childhood that's impacting your parenting. I will not repeat to you the words that came out of my mouth because I went into a rage. She hit the core. I flew out of the room where I was on the phone with her, and I said to my husband, who does she think she is? My childhood has nothing to do with who I am today. I'm a brand new creature in Christ. My past is gone. A week after fuming, I said to the Father, was she right? I remember that day I had my hands on my hips with an attitude. And I said, is she right? Because quite frankly, I know she's not right. My past has nothing to do with me today. Even though I had a cocky attitude, I had given the Father permission to start opening the door. And he little by little by little started peeling the snakeskin lies off from me. So I'm going to share with you some of what I have learned through my journey. And one of the books of the Bible that he used a lot was the book of Nehemiah. And because of time, we're only going to look at snippets from Nehemiah. So Nehemiah is a message of hope and restoration. What God did for them, he will do for us. He will take the broken places of our lives and rebuild them for our protection and for his glory. Snippets from Nehemiah. And I want to encourage you to read the first 8 chapters of Nehemiah on your own. Ask the Father what he wants to show you personally about your journey in the first 8 books of Nehemiah, because it is a template for the journey of recovery. Nehemiah inquires of Hanani and the other Judeans about the well-being of the remnant that survived captivity. They reported the remnant who survived the captivity there in the province are in great distress, and the walls of Jerusalem are broken down and the gates are burned with fire. When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed to the God of heaven. Please, my Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight in revering your name. Give your servant success today and grant compassion in the presence of this man, for he was going before the king, and he was the cupbearer to the king, which is a very high, prestigious position. The king said to me, what is it that you want? Then I prayed to the God of heaven. May I go repair Jerusalem's walls? Yes, go in peace. And the opposition begins. When Sanballat, the Horonite, Tobiah, the Ammonite official heard of it, they were deeply disturbed that a man had come to seek the well-being of the children of Israel. Most projects come with a price. Is that not true, Juliet? There is usually some opposition. We move forward in faith, trusting in God's help. Here's the troublemakers. We have Tobiah, Sanballat, and Geshem. So I went up at night by the ravine and inspected the wall. Then I entered the valley gate again and returned. The officials did not know where I had gone or what I had done, nor had I yet told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officials, or the rest of the people that did the work. So here Nehemiah on his own went to survey the rubble. But his donkey could not get through the rubble because there was so much rubble he couldn't push forward. And this is a really great illustration in our lives. When we have a rubble in our lives that we have not dealt with, we cannot move forward. I touched earlier on the trauma responses, the fight, flight, fawn, freeze. And when we are in these trauma responses, that's a form of rubble where it will hold us back from moving forward, doing the kingdom assignments that he has for us. So in Nehemiah 2, then I said to them, you see the trouble that we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild. Let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace, reproach, which you can translate that shame. I also told them about my gracious hand of my God on me and what the king had said to me. They replied, let us start building. So they began this good work. Now I want to point out that there were people that had a mind to work. Recovery takes that drive to do the work. You can't just sit in a church pew and think that you're going to be delivered if you've got demons operating in your life or if you've got rubble. We have to do the work to remove that rubble, and it takes a team of people, whether that's a therapist, a mentor, a sponsor. So in Nehemiah 3, we see that the daughters and the fathers are working side by side. The men and the women are working together. This is very, very important. Men and women together. And then, so in Nehemiah 3:5, we see that there are those that refused to do the work. So we have two mindsets. We have people that are determined to go to any lengths to stay clean, to stay sober, to go to any lengths to do the work. And then we've got the church dwellers that are refusing to do any type of work. Opposition continues with different strategies. Mockery, violence, intimidation, financial pressures. When Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became furious. He mocked the Jews before his colleagues and the powerful men of Samaria and said, what are these pathetic Adventists doing? Can they restore it by themselves? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they ever finish it? Can they bring these burnt stones back to life from the mounds of rubble? I can assure you that there's been times in my recovery journey that I did not think that I was ever going to stop being angry, stop crying, that I could ever forgive, that I could ever be in a different place than being an emotional basket case. But I can tell you that there is hope and healing. And there is an end. Well, maybe I shouldn't put it that way because I'm still in that process, but there is an end to the places where we are stuck in anger, stuck in unforgiveness, stuck in shame. Yes, oh God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over as plunder in a land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of the builders. So we rebuilt the wall till all of it had reached half its height, for the people worked with all their heart. I remember sitting in many AA meetings and hearing, it works if you work it, so work it because you're worth it. And I've heard many, many people talk about going to any lengths to stay clean and sober. It's being determined, just for today, I'm not going to pick up the drug, the drink, fill in the blank. Meanwhile, the people in Judah said, the strength of the laborers is giving out, and there's so much rubble that we cannot rebuild the wall. There comes a time when it does seem overwhelming. So Nehemiah tells them, we are fighting for our family. We are fighting for our communities. We are fighting for our marriages. We're fighting for ourselves. Builders and their helpers had their tools in one hand and a weapon in the other hand because the opposition was so great. The work is extensive. The work is great, and it's extensive, and we're separated on the wall far from one another. At whatever place you hear the sound of the trumpet or shofar, roaring to us there, our God will fight for us. This is where we need safe people. That when we are in a place where we want to pick up a drug, pick up a drink, pick up whatever your addiction is, that we can pick up the phone and cry out, I need help. This is where safe community comes in handy. Stay alert, stay alive. Stay alert, stay alive. None of us ever took off our clothes, our armor. We carried our weapons with us at all times. We're supposed to be armored up and have a weapon, right? Every day. That's our battle gear. So here's the troublemakers, relentless. And believe me, the enemy will be relentless when he sees that you are trying to get free, whatever your addiction, whatever it is that's going on in your life. Sanballat and Geshem sent me this message. Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of, oh no. But they were scheming to harm me. Nehemiah says, I'm doing a great work. I'm sorry, I cannot come down. So he had wisdom, discernment, and he was focused on kingdom business. Types of boundaries. Words. The most basic boundary setting word is no. No is a complete sentence. You have a right to say no. Physical distance. Removing yourself from a situation where you feel uncomfortable. Time. How much time you will or will not give a person. Emotional distance. Guard your heart. There are people that are toxic. There are people that are not healthy. And sometimes we need to go a gray rock if it's a narcissist in your life. Sometimes you just have to go no contact with people. Unfortunately, it's true. Some of the most poisonous people come disguised as friends and family. It's sad but true. They were all trying to frighten us, thinking their hands will get too weak for the work and it will not be completed. But I prayed, now strengthen my hands. So I continued the work with even greater determination, which only came through connection with God and through the power of prayer, crying out to the Father for the strength, the stamina. And they finished the wall in 52 days. And let me tell you, I wish recovery worked like that in 52 days. Some rehabs, it used to be a 28-day program, and people would come out of the program thinking that they were cured. And that's not how recovery works, because it's a lifelong journey. So what's your rubble? What's your rubble? Rebuilding with rubble. You can rebuild your life. In troubled families, abuse and neglect are permitted. It's the thinking about them that is forbidden. I'm going to read that again because it's a powerful statement. In troubled families, abuse and neglect are permitted. It's the talking about them that is forbidden. These are things that we must start talking about, because there are things happening behind closed doors that the children are watching, and it's going on to a next generation. Dysfunctional family dynamics. The rules are don't talk, don't trust, don't feel, which is a perfect setup for addiction of all sorts. Do you know anybody like this? Is this you? Maybe. You don't want to hear about it. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to see it. So you're just putting your head in the sand. It's not that bad. I should be over it by now. That happened to me when I was 5 years old. Why is it still bothering me? Why are those memories still coming up? I can't let it hurt. So we eat, we drug, we drink. I shouldn't focus on the negative. How many of you have been told that you were a negative person? Am I the only one? Oh, you're so negative. No, I'm just talking some reality here. This is denial. It's not denial. I'm just very selective about the reality I accept. We resort to spiritual bypassing when we can't process our own unpleasant emotions or process certain traumas. There is what's called spiritual bypassing, and I did that for 2 years. I put the plug in the jug, I put the cocaine down, street drugs down, and I picked up a Bible and I went to church. And I was on a pink cloud for a while, and then pastor's wife had the audacity to say that to me, and I prayed that prayer, and I gave God the permission to start unraveling truth, and it was not a pretty picture. Jennifer Jill, has anybody here heard about Dr. Jennifer Jill Schwisser? Okay. Prescribing more prayer or Bible study is often religious people's attempt to escape the discomfort of apathy. Trauma sits in our nervous system, big, fat, ugly sore, ready to bleed at the slightest provocation. There's so much fighting going on in the church. Let's get real. People are offended left and right. For those of you that missed Sabbath school, this is just, a recap. So we went over adverse childhood experiences. We did what's called an ACE quiz to see perhaps you have some of these in your past. You can connect the dots in your health, here and the now, or maybe some other things that are going on in your life. Abuse, physical, emotional, verbal, and spiritual. Neglect, family suicide, food insecurity, cult activities, which is huge nowadays, is everywhere, and trafficking, which is everywhere. So the impacts of adverse childhood experiences. This was an eye-opener for me. Chronic health problems, mental illness, substance misuse in adulthood, decreased education and job opportunities that can lead to homelessness. Toxic stress, it changes brain development and affects attention, decision-making, learning, and responses to stress. A lot of us cannot handle stress because our nervous system is jacked up. At least 5 of the 10 leading causes of death are associated with ACEs. That's huge. Economic and social cost to families, communities, and society totals hundreds of billions of dollars each year. Here's statistics. I'm not sure when this stat was taken, but I'm thinking that the percentages are low. That's just my opinion. So substance abuse, 27%. Parental separation, divorce, 23. Mental illness, 17. Battered mom, 13. Criminal behavior, 6. abuse, psychological 11, physical 28, sexual 21, neglect, emotional 15, physical 10. So what I want to convey with you, to you, is this is common. This is common. So you're not alone in this. You're not alone in your struggles. I love this here because it shows the root system in the fruit. And it breaks it down from household, community, and environment. Here in Florida, we're having more and more hurricanes, right? I mean, look at the tornadoes that are going on. So we have a lot of environmental crisis that's happening, and it's causing a lot of trauma. So it's not just what's going on in the household, but it's what's going on in the communities and in the environment. So let's start breaking down the ACEs. So physical abuse is deliberately aggressive or violent behavior by one person toward another. It is most frequently observed in relationships of trust, which creates betrayal, particularly between parents and children or between intimate partners and siblings. Individuals who experience physical abuse often feel helpless and isolated and are prone to the subsequent development of numerous pathological conditions, depression, eating disorders, post-traumatic stress, anxiety disorders, and substance use problems. Emotional abuse, a pattern, pattern of behavior that creates fear. Such mistreatment can occur in a range of interpersonal contexts, including a parental relationship, romantic relationship, professional relationship. People who suffer emotional abuse can experience short-term difficulties, such as confusion, fear, difficulty concentrating, low confidence, which is insecurity, as well as nightmares, aches, pains, racing heart, that's anxiety. Long-term repercussions may include the anxiety, insomnia, and social withdrawal. People isolate themselves to self-protect, to make sure that, you're not going to hurt me anymore. So I'm going to isolate. Punishment for expressing negative emotions like sadness, frustration, or anger. Being told to go to your room. Be quiet. Shutting the person down. Lack of shared celebration or joy when experiencing a positive emotion like happiness or excitement. It might even present as zapping the positive emotion with a negative response, which sends the message, you don't matter. You don't matter. So what? Being told your feelings or experiences aren't valid or worth further examination. Or you're too sensitive. Stop acting like a baby. Oh, don't worry about it. Dismissed or ignored feelings because the parent is focused on themselves or another situation, withholding or not showing affection. Children need attention. They need affection. Failure to intervene or find a solution in situations when a child is under emotional stress. Not acknowledging difficult emotions like grief after losing a pet or embarrassment after being bullied. A lot of our kids are, experiencing being bullied. And often it's because the parent, because of their own trauma, unresolved trauma, or whatever's going on in the parent's life, they're not able to be present because it's a generational thing. Emotional neglect is considered a form of trauma, as it can have long-lasting and profound effects on a person's emotional and psychological well-being. Psychology Today says sexual abuse is any activity that occurs without consent. No matter which act occurs, it's not the survivor's fault that they were assaulted, and help is available to begin healing from such abuse. I'm not going to go into it because there's, tender little ears, but there's a lot to this topic, and we need to start talking about it more. And because there's a lot of men and women that have suffered from this, and they sit in the pews and they think that they're the only one, and they're not. Trafficking is happening everywhere. We need to know about these things. The greatest damage done by neglect, trauma, or emotional loss is not the immediate pain they inflict, but the long-term distortions that induce in the way a developing child will continue to interpret the world and her situation. It puts filters on a person, like a shame filter. You don't see the world as it is. Your perception is skewed from the trauma. A slew of mental health issues. Now, I do want to interject, but I'm not going to go. A loved one incarcerated can have a devastating impact on families. It can be just as traumatizing as losing someone unexpectedly to death. Over 6 million adults in the U.S. have a family member in jail or prison. The incarceration of a loved one can cause financial instability, reduce social support, and increase the burden on caregivers. Additionally, the impact on family mental health is profound, often affecting the physical and psychological well-being of family members left behind. This is called the power and control wheel. So we're going to touch on domestic abuse, which is huge. And domestic abuse is not a broken arm and a black eye. There is all sorts of different ways that abuse can be manifesting in the home. And it's not just the men. We sisters can be pretty vicious, let me tell you. So it's minimizing, denying, and blaming, using isolation, using emotional abuse, intimidation, threats, economic abuse, and male privilege, and using the children. Some stats. 1 in 4 women in the U.S. will be targeted by an abusive partner in their lifetime. This is huge. I got the stats the other day from domesticshelter.org, a really, really good resource for if you know someone who's experiencing domestic violence, or if you want education. Super resource. Every 9 seconds, a woman is beaten by someone they know. 85% of domestic violence victims are women. 1 in 10 men in the U.S. experience contact sexual violence, physical violence, stalking by an intimate partner during their lifetime. 3.3 million estimated number of children in the U.S. each year that witness violence against their moms or a female caretaker by a family member. 40 to 60% of men who abuse women and also abuse children. 1 in 5 number of teenage girls who said they have been in a relationship where the boyfriend threatened violence or self-harm if breakup was to occur. So here she is guilted into staying in a relationship that she's trying to get out of. We need to be teaching our young people. 85% of domestic violence victims who are women. 175,000. The number of work days American employees miss each year on account of domestic violence. You can't go to work with, if your face is all bruised up or you've choke marks on your throat. So you call in sick. 40 to 70% of female murder victims in the U.S. who were killed by their husbands or boyfriends, often within an ongoing abusive relationship. And the prisons have probably quite a few women who, out of desperation, did some drastic things to stop the abuse. And now they are sitting in prison. Children living in violent homes. Runaways. Violence in our streets. What about all the gun violence? Substance abuse. Food addictions. Sexual assaults. Date rape. Sexual harassment. Use of pornography. Teen pregnancy. Violence at school. Truancy. And a new generation of violent families. It's a learned behavior. Drug addiction. Our society is in deep with the addictions. It breaks my heart to see what's going on. Substance use disorder is a cluster of physiological, behavioral, and cognitive symptoms associated with the continued use of substances despite substance-related problems, distress, or impairment, such as impaired control or risky use. Addiction is a state of psychological and or physical dependence on the use of drugs or other substances, such as alcohol or other activities or behaviors such as sex, exercise, and gambling. And yes, there even is addiction to religion. It can be very dangerous to trade one addiction for another, especially if the new addiction becomes just as or even more challenging to break than the first. This is often an endless cycle that can be very hard to break free of. So we switch addictions. Very common. Scientists have found that food addiction shares many characteristics with other substance abuse disorders, including drug and alcohol addiction. My first addiction was to my mama's chocolate cream pie. And in recovery, when I was really dealing with some deep, hard stuff, I would crave chocolate cream pie. In my mind's eye, I could see her flaky crust, and I could taste that creamy chocolate from, she would use fresh raw milk from, the neighbor's cows next door. I mean, she just poured it in. I'm telling you, I would put scads of whipped cream on top, and I was in heaven. That was my zone. I remember sitting in the dining room all alone. Nobody was there to say mean things to me. Nobody was there to abuse me in any way. And I would sit there with Mama's chocolate cream pie, and I was safe. And how food works in the body, it's a numbing substance. So you probably can't see this slide very well, which is unfortunate. But I wanted to use this slide because I wanted to relay the message that it's the whole family. And every person in the family plays a role. So you've got the addict, you've got the codependent, right? They are the protector of the family. They keep everything going. It's the codependent. Then with the kids, the children, you've got the family hero, mascot, lost child, scapegoat. So I like to point out, you've got the rules and the roles. The rules are you don't talk, you don't think, you don't feel, you don't trust. So you are shut down. And then the roles are all survival roles. They are the family survival roles, but these are not who you are. This is not who you are. This is the defense mechanisms, the false self that a person develops in order to survive their family system if there's a lot of things going on in the family system. So I like to ask people, who did he knit you together in your mama's womb to be? Touching on divorce and separation. Psychological and emotional trauma. Altered family structures. social dislocation and diminished financial resources, distressed and confused children. So let's take a brief look at biblical families with high doses. King David, king of Israel. Have you ever read his story? So, I may be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is all the kings went to war, so his soldiers went to war, he stayed home. He had his eyes where they shouldn't belong, and he brought another man's wife, ordered her into his house, had committed an act, got her pregnant. He found out she was pregnant, so he ordered her husband to be murdered. So he committed adultery, murder, and then when his own son also did the same types of behavior to his daughter, he didn't address it. He was angry, but he never addressed it. So the one brother took care of it, because in these near ancient society, it's honor and shame society. So we've got sibling abuse, we've got adultery, murder, rape, we've got all sorts of things going on in King David's family. But what does God say? What does the Bible say? That King David is the apple of his eye, a man after his own heart. And often pondered, well, how see when all this mess was going on. And I think probably, if you read Psalm 51, where he's on his face lamenting and confessing. I think that's probably why, because he was trying to walk in teshuvah. Teshuvah in Hebrew means you turn from your sin. You turn and you start walking in rightness and righteousness. What about the tribes of Israel? The tribes of Israel. Wow, were they a mess or what? Woo! Deception, lying, scheming, manipulation, favoritism, vengefulness, jealousy, hatred, thoughts of murder, horrific tragedy. My goodness sakes, that's a story too that you may want to read on your own time. So no generation can bequeath to its successors what it has not got. If we don't have it, we can't give it to our children. But we have an opportunity. I used to say to my clients, the best gift you can give to your children is the gift of your recovery. The gift of your recovery, because your recovery is a gift, not just to your family, but to your community. It's a gift to the world. So the question is not what is wrong with you. The question is what happened to you. And I wanted to throw out there the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is, oops, I made a mistake. Please forgive me, and I will not do that again. Whereas shame says, I am a mistake. There's something wrong with me that's not wrong with anybody else. And if you really knew me, you wouldn't want anything to do with me. I spent years and years and years trying to get away from myself because I could not stand being in my own skin. And the drugs and the alcohol and the food and other activities took me out of myself. And it's taken me a long time to learn to love who God made me to be. We are commanded, are we not, to love our neighbor as we love ourselves? Well, what do you do when you've been taught not to love yourself? It's a long process, believe me. So, the good news is, we're going to wrap it up, but the good word is post-traumatic growth. Has anybody here heard the term post-traumatic growth? So there's post-traumatic stress, right, or complex post-traumatic stress. Well, post-traumatic growth. It's what happened to Joseph. Joseph said, what the enemy meant for evil, God meant for good. And when God showed me that all those years that I lived that lifestyle, that He had His hand on me and He kept me alive for a purpose, for a reason. So how do we achieve this post-traumatic growth? You've got to go through the process of trauma, or processing the trauma. You've got to do the work. Reflecting on your beliefs. What is your false belief system that's going on? Seek help. The shame is not that you've got issues. The shame is that a person's not seeking the help. Recognize your strengths. In 4-step inventory, I used to be scared to do the 4-step inventory because it was scary in there. It was scary to write down all the junk about myself. But we have to balance it out and find the good things, find the strength. And believe me, it took me a long time to find anything good about myself because I was so shattered. And give it time. Give it time. I love this quote by Jennifer Jill. Trauma survivors who pass through their own journey of healing, continually realizing their need for divine and human support and good, solid self-care practices, can be wonderfully effective in helping other trauma survivors. In fact, she says, God would have us create a process of healing by sharing what we've learned from others, who in turn pass their new knowledge on to others until eventually everyone is helped. It's a we program. We may have Rubble, but we need one another to help each other remove the rubble from our lives. There is hope for each of our families. So let's get started on our journey to freedom. Thank you.